Started from the bottom, kept on climbing, perfect timing, looking down from the top. I don't see no opposition from my position. I'm focused. It's a must, I complete the mission. I won't stop, I can't stop. The grind is all I know. I'm focused, I can't stop. The hustle's all I know. I'm hungry, ambitious. My heart is on go. You in the presence of greatness. That's all you need to know.
Hey, Identity Jedi family, welcome back to another episode of the Identity Jedi Show. Listen, we slash through the noise on this show. We bring clarity, strategy, and just a little bit of swagger to the world of identity and access management. I'm your host, David Lee, and today we got another fire conversation for you guys. We've got Ashish Haw, CPO and co-founder of Andromeda Security, dropping by the pod. He chops it up with me and Samir, and we have a very detailed conversation about a lot of different things in identity. But we're going to get to that in just a second. Before we do that, we got some housekeeping items we got to get to. So first up, we got to give a shout out to our brand ambassador partnership with Leo Vici. As you can see, I'm rocking the latest threads and the drop that we got from them. I love this new hat that they dropped. It's like just the perfect color. Love the way it fits. And listen, when I tell you these sweatshirts, man, they got the best sweatshirts, sweatpants like ever. Love how comfortable they are. Love how they stretch and they breathe. And listen, we didn't do this partnership just for us so we could get some dope gear. We got it so that way we can come back and make sure you guys can get the same access to this dope gear. So right now, you can use code Identity Jedi at checkout for 15% off. And also, that's anything on the store. But also what we did is we set up a page for all of my favorites. So listen, if you're watching this, you can head over to our Identity Jedi shop at Leo Vici. You can hit the link below in the show notes and you can see all of the favorites that I like, right? So here you've got the different hoodies, you've got the hat that I'm wearing right now, you've got the sweatpants. And listen, any of these things, once you click on, of course, you get eligible for your 15% off. Right? So make sure you go use the code Identity Jedi, get your 15% off and be rocking with Leo Vici just like us. We appreciate it. Next up, listen, don't forget, we are 1 week away from Identiverse. The Identity Super Bowl is going down in Las Vegas at Mandalay Bay. So many amazing speakers are lined up. I think this is probably going to be one of the best Identiverses we've had in a while. The rumor is we're talking about over 3,000 people. 3,000 people coming to Identiverse to go talk about identity. Man, they've got workshops coming in. They've got great speakers. They've got great keynotes. Your boy himself has 2 different sessions, Wednesday and Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific time. You can check the agenda to get that. But let me tell you the thing I'm most excited about coming up at Identiverse, right? It is the VIP Identity Jedi Royale event that we're doing in partnership with Sapient. Listen, this is going to be a live podcast recording of the Identity Jedi Show. But it's not just going to be any type of show. No. We couldn't do that. It's Vegas. We got to do it Vegas style, so it's Identity Royale style. Listen, we got a nice, swanky, VIP level place where you can come in and see this viewing. Also, the conversation is going to be about leadership. I've got some great leaders coming in. We're going to have a panel discussion about what it takes to be a leader, right? What does leadership mean to each individual? What are some of the lessons they've learned? What are some of the losses they've taken? What's some of the best advice they've gotten? And this is going to be a intimate conversation. So we want you to be in the room. So if you are a leader in the identity space or you want to be a leader in the identity space, this is the event you need to be at an Identiverse. So how do you get there? Listen, number one, check the link in the show notes. Look, I'm dropping it down there so you can register, get on the VIP list. DM me. Send me an email, identityjedi@gmail.com. Send me a carrier pigeon, a raven, whatever. The whole point is get in contact with me. Let me know that you want to be in the room. I'll get you on the list because we've got a great night planned for everybody that's in attendance. And listen, when I tell you that space is limited, so you want to act right now, this isn't a marketing ploy. I'm dead serious. Like, we do not have a lot of room, and so it is filling up fast. But to make sure that we get you on the list so you can be there for the Identity Jedi Royale event. VIP style, Vegas style. You guys know how we do it. So super excited for that. Now, let's get into this week's show. Like I said earlier, our guest today is Ashish Haw, CPO, co-founder, right, at Andromeda Security. And we just have a dope conversation around identity. And one of the things I really respect as I've gotten to know Ashish over the years is that I love that his perspective of bringing things to identity. He comes from a peer industry to identity, right? So he wasn't in identity, but had some success there, came into identity. And I love that we're getting these new people coming into identity that have a different perspective because they're challenging some of the things that we've always done. And they're also looking at things that we've got to solve coming forth. And in this conversation, we hear a lot about that from Ashish. I mean, we talk about agentic AI, which you cannot have a conversation this year in 2025 without talking about agentic AI. It is literally everywhere. It's what NHI was last year. Now it's agentic AI. So we talk about that. We talk about some of the things that as we look forward in identity, what do we see from vendors, from solutions, and how do we look to be solving this, right? So really dope conversation that's in there. Can't wait for you guys to listen to that. And I'm gonna send you there in just a minute. But I want to kind of wax poetic on something for just a second before we get to this, because part of that conversation, and since we recorded this conversation with Ashish, and I'm going to tell you this right now, forgive what you're going to see in the background, guys. I was building towards getting to the studio set that you see right now, and it took weeks to kind of get there. But we didn't want to hold off on recording before we got there. So you're going to see some of the rawness in the video background when we get to the interview. But ever since we had this conversation, and then some conversations I've had since then, I've just been thinking about this idea of an identity data lake, right? Really looking at what's the fundamental problem to identity, and it's really getting the identity data, right? If any of you have done an IGA platform implementation, like that first 2-3 months of really understanding the data, where am I going to get my unique identifier? Like hopefully they already have one. If they don't, I got to create one. How am I going to correlate identity data? How am I going to clean up some of the identity data that I get once I get it in there, right? When we built these platforms, these identity tools, we gave you some ability to do ETL because that's really what this is, extract, transform, load, right? But we didn't give you a lot because identity tools were built to get to provisioning or certifications or single sign-on, right? They weren't really built to allow you to really kind of do ETL processing on data. They give you just enough to get to where you want to get to. And that's not a knock on any of the vendors. That's not the space they were trying to solve. But as we unroll this and really look at it, you can't really get to some of the things that we talk about in today's modern architectures, right? Your just-in-time access, your zero standing privilege. You want to automate all the things. You want AI to answer all these questions for you, show you context and analysis. Well, you can't get there without quality data. You've got to be able to get into this data. You've got to extract this data from the different systems. You've got to transform it to understand what's the logic behind it. And now you can finally load it and give it to someplace, ETL, right? So what if instead of trying to shove this into platforms that don't really give you the proper tools to address this, what if we actually put it in the tools that do that best, that allow you to do the extraction, that allow you to do the correlations, the attribute detections, the attribute massaging, the generating unique identifiers? We made that available to you in one section. You can do all the analytics, you can do all the things that you want on identity data, and then provide a clean, segmented view to your identity systems, right? As I started to think about this, I was like, okay, well, what if we tried to build an identity data lake on top of Snowflake? And I just used Snowflake. It was the first thing that came to my head. And I started just kind of working through it, putting together some architecture. And I'll share that with you guys of what I've gotten so far. Again, check the link below. I'll probably post that on the Identity Jedi newsletter page. It'll be, open to everybody. You can go hit it. But I want you to comment on it and let me know like what you think and things that you've maybe tried. But I think this kind of idea of separating the identity store from your identity systems, right? And maybe it doesn't have to be a complete separate product. Maybe it's just, a companion product that goes alongside your identity systems. It could be done by one of these vendors. But my point is like truly giving you an identity data lake where you have access to flexibility around how you do ETL, whether you want to do Python scripting, you want to do Lambda, whatever you want, but you've got the processing capability to take this data and make the decisions you want and then create a standardized view of what that identity data looks like so you can feed it to your IDP, your IAM, your ITDR, your ISPM, your I star, whatever you want it to feed it to. But what this allows you to do is it allows your identity team to focus on doing identity things, right? And starting to be able to automate and do the things you want to do around, certifications or just in time or those things. But now, right, and this is something that Ian Glazer has really been talking about is now I can take this data, and let's give it to data analytics team, right? I want to start playing with different AI models and seeing things that I can get, or different analytics tools. I can drop that on top of the identity data, right? And I can drop it on top of the raw data instead of the refined data, right? Or either or. But my point is, wherever I point this to, it's not tied into my identity systems, right? Those tools that really don't have and haven't been built to be able to process and use access to that data. And maybe in the future, one day, this is all one platform. That'll be great. But it's an interesting thought piece that I've been having. Like I said, I'll share what I've put together in there for you. Would love to get your guys' thoughts. Hit me up in the mailbag, identityjedi@gmail.com, and let me know what you think about that, right? Am I off, right? Have you built one of these? Have you done this internally? It'd be great to kind of hear from the people, of course, always to kind of take this. So with that, that's our opening for today. That's what we got coming up. Hang tight after the interview. I got some more things that I want to drop on you. But right now, let's get you over to the interview with myself, Ashish, and Samir. Everybody, welcome back to another interview session here on the Identity Jedi Show. So happy to have this special guest come on, because we're going to be talking about one of the hottest topics in identity right now. Like, seriously, you cannot Google identity right now and this topic not come up. So we have our special guest coming on to talk about it. We're going to dive into it, how he sees the market, what he thinks about that topic, and a little bit about what his company does to address it. But you guys know how we start every single interview session first, and I got to check in with my guy, Samir, back in WeWork, man. How you doing? How's your week been so far?
Back in WeWork, got my glasses on, feeling good, slept well. It's Monday morning, so, well, Monday evening, afternoon and evening for you and I, but feels like morning. I'm feeling good, man. I'm good. I'm happy to be back at WeWork. How are you?
Okay. I'm good, man. I don't have my glasses on. I should put them on. I'm still being stubborn. I have to go get my. So I have two prescriptions, right? I have my regular ones, and then my one's for a specific computer. But I have to go get them redone because, like, the doctor made the prescription like way too close. So I have to like lean all the way in, and I was like, I don't want to do all that. So I'm using that as an excuse not to wear them right now. But I need to be wearing them, but I'm not. So, but I'm good, man. It's been a busy day, like a ton of meetings today. Some good conversations though, but you know. It is what it is, man. We just keep it moving.
Keep it moving. Keep it moving. I like it.
All right. Well, let's jump into this topic, man. Like, listen, we've got Ashish Haw coming on, and I gotta give this. But before I have you introduce yourself, Ashish, I have to give like the story of how we met, because I just thought this was awesome, man. Like, so we met like, it was last year? Was it last year?
Yep.
Or was it 2 years ago? It was last year, Black Hat, right?
Yep.
So we met last year at Black Hat. And it was crazy because I wasn't even going to go to Black Hat, but I go, and then I meet David McCall, and he's like, hey, man, you got to come, like, you know, check out the products. I was like, all right, cool. Let's come upstairs to the room. And like immediately as they start showing it, man, I'm like geeking out. I'm looking at this product. I'm like, this is really good. Like, you know what I mean? And I'm like, it's like, you guys are like small startup. I was like, okay. And I just started talking about like what's there in the product. And I can tell by the way it's built, like the architecture behind it, but also like engineer to engineer, right? Like you can just tell when something's well thought out and designed, right? And that was the biggest aspect. And so that's how I met like Ashish and the rest of the crew. And we just kind of started talking about different things and how they were attacking the problem. And I loved your enthusiasm, like for solving the problem and bringing it in. So I was like, man, this guy's awesome. So I'm super excited to have you here and just kind of have this conversation today. So I will stop and kind of let you introduce yourself to the people, and we'll get started in the combo.
Thanks, David, and thanks, Samir. Great opportunity. Thank you for that. I mean, I've always seen you as the Identity Jedi, and the energy and the passion that you bring in, and now with Samir on the podcast, it's just awesome, because I think we're all trying to solve the problem of identity, and having that mindset of solving the right way for the community, for the industry as a whole.
Yeah,
I think that's important. So that's why I'm looking forward to this conversation. In terms of the introduction, I'm Ashish, one of the co-founders of Andromeda Security that David mentioned. We met last year at Black Hat. And we are trying to solve identity through a data-centric problem. We'll talk more about how we're trying to do it. But we're taking a more holistic approach from both human and non-human identities, and solving a plethora of use cases through a modern architecture, through revolutionary architecture. And that's what I think, David, you're referring to in terms of what's different about how we are doing it here. And again, I'm looking forward to the conversation, David and Samir.
Yeah, man. And it's awesome. And I want to set the tone like right there for the conversation, right? Because like what I teased about, like, the hottest topic right now is non-human identity, and that's just kind of like that's where we have our attention. But also behind that is just the bigger problem with identity right now, right? And so I love hearing people's aspects of it because, your background, like you came from a different sector and looked at identity and was like, man, there's some cool problems we can solve here, right? And
Yes.
you hit on it like from a data-centric perspective, and that gets me going because I'm like, this is like I will die on the hill that I swear that identity is 90% a data problem. Like if you just can understand the data and the relationships between identity, right? Like it solves like so many problems. So, let's start the conversation there. Talk to us a little bit about your approach and looking at that and going, hey, looking over here, and it's like, hey, we see this data, and if we apply it this way, I think this is a different way we can kind of, solve this problem. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Sure. Before we start about how we want to solve the problem, I think it's important to level set on what are the problems we are trying to solve, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I think of, let's say, three, the third one being emerging. The first one is security, clearly in identity, right? It's a primary attack vector, your overprivileged identities. It's not a matter of if, it's when you'll get compromised. And when you get compromised, you have a large attack surface given the overprivileges. So clearly, reducing the attack surface, doing least privilege, zero trust, whatever you want to call it, that's problem number one. But I think equally important problem and sometimes overlooked, especially in the cybersecurity industry, is just the ongoing operations, right? You cannot have a security tool that's hard to use. If you put a gate saying everything is gated, nobody's going to use it, right? You're defeating the purpose of security, but not by not employing it, right? So how do you make it easy? Like identity, there are so many different tools from IGAs to PAM to ITDR and now NHI and so on. If you don't make it easy, you're going to not achieve the desired goal. So making it operationally easy, especially when you have an explosion in identities, human and non-human, you mentioned that, and you have an explosion in permissions in cloud and SaaS, right? So how do you automate that, right? That was the second problem we wanted to solve. And frankly, a third emerging one, and I'd love to have a deeper chat on that, is AI, right? The elephant in the room. Clearly, AI is going to have multiple implications. You're going to have more attacks, more sophisticated attacks, but also a new kind of identity is emerging, which is the agentic AI. Now, you could argue agentic AI is NHI. I would argue it's a third type of identity. And the reason is it's like an NHI, but it behaves like a human, right? So you need to model it. You need to have behavioral analysis like a human. You talk to multiple systems. You can be autonomous. You can behave in an ad hoc fashion. Traditional NHIs don't. They just talk to one application in a predictable fashion. So it's easier to build behavioral model on. So I think emergence of agentic AI and how to build guardrails around it, I think is a third problem. So those were, I think if you just level set on what are the problems we want to solve, I think that's where I would start. And I'd love to understand how you think about it before we talk about how we're trying to solve it.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to lay it out, and especially that last one with agentic AI, because I mean, I kind of, in my head, I kind of classified it as more on the NHI side, but like listen to your explanation when I think about it, especially about like the behavioral patterns of it, because that is the biggest thing with agentic is that it literally can't, it's not, you're giving it a problem set and it just kind of figures it out.
Yeah.
Right. And so therefore, to your point, like the behavior pattern would look more like a human's like, oh, I need this access. I'm going to go do this. Now I'm going to log and go do this. Whereas, it's going to be very typical NHI, a service account, any of that. It's the same thing every time. You'll see that pattern very quickly, right? Oh, it's time for me to go pull in data. I'm going to go authenticate, right? Oh, it's time for me to process this query. I'm going to go do this, right? So yeah, I think it is definitely going to be interesting. And the other thing that comes up, like I've had discussions around like, RPA, and I was like, yeah, I just think this is the next evolution of it, right? And RPA is still just kind of the same. I set a set script, but it's still got it's not thinking, it's not ad hoc moving around, it's just following the script, right? And what it doesn't is it's depending on how well you set up, it's pretty sophisticated what it falls back to. So, and the interesting thing is that the speed, like I can't recall a time in my lifetime that I've seen technology move this fast.
Yeah.
Especially in the enterprise.
Yeah.
Right. And Samir, I'd be interested to get your perspective on this too. Like, I just feel like AI has attached itself in the enterprise, and it is just, I mean, like spreading like crazy, like a weed. And then it's like whatever I was using in January, by June, it's a completely different thing. And now I've got even more apps and things that I'm using, right? Like SaaS is probably the closest thing. Like we saw this sprawl with SaaS and Shadow IT became a thing. But I mean, nowhere near, like SaaS apps weren't completely changing themselves in the matter of a quarter, right? Like it has just been ridiculous how fast this thing is moving. And so to think about and model how behavior and how we're going to kind of wrap our heads around this, I know it's got to be driving CISOs absolutely insane.
Yeah, I think so. Just taking one step back, I remember when you met with Andromeda and Ashish, I think I spoke to you. We had a usual one-on-one catch up. You're like, man, these guys are amazing. They're doing it right. You were super, super excited after meeting with Andromeda. So I wanted to, because usually you don't do that.
I know.
It takes a lot to get you excited. So that's pretty impressive. That's one. I think the second thing is just listening to you guys talk, right? I think, yeah, I think, now that I'm back in the CISO world, I can say that there's a lot of new changing paradigms and expectations where our bosses are telling us, before you get another headcount, see if you can solve with AI, right? That's come up not just for me, but other leaders as well. But in talking to founders, right, when we're doing POCs and we're talking to, startups that are friends of mine, maybe, the thing that they say to me is interesting. They're like, look, we built this, but in 6 months, someone could build it twice as fast. In 10 months, we don't know what the world is going to look like, right? And so I think the comment you made, David, about when you met with Andromeda about, structurally sound, strong foundation, I think these are important things that startups need to think about, right? Because if they're going to come into my world as a CISO now and not have the capability to not pivot so much, but be able to meet my use cases as my use cases expand, not be able to have not thought through, all the various risk profiles of identity. Ashish said it right. There's many problems in identity, right? Eventually, I'm going to want a platform to solve all of them, eventually, or most of them. I think that's the part that makes me nervous to do design partnerships with the early stage companies right now. Because, I talked to one today that said, oh, I used wipe coding and I got this stuff done on the weekend. A little worried about resilience. And then, the other problems that your compliance team as a CISO is like, well, they have their SOC too, and, they've got funding, so we're fine. And I'm like, no, that's not enough to say this is worth our time, right? So you got to kind of find that middle ground to say, is this worth taking a risk with partnering with these companies?
Yeah.
I think totally, right? And I think so some of the things that you mentioned earlier, David, right? We came from a completely different background. So yeah, we came from another company called RV Networks where we took on the load balancing and a web application firewall problem, again, in architectural and a platform way, right? So the core engineering team has come from Cisco to RV to now Andromeda. We built multi-billion-dollar platforms and that being used by large-scale financial services and other organizations today. So that's we want to. So when we started Andromeda, we wanted to solve a hard problem the right way through doing the architecture right, and that's how a little bit of the story, the background story. That's how we started with Andromeda. Like we took on a hard problem, solving the right way. To what Samir said, that's exactly what we did for identity. So what's different about us, or how we solve it differently, is when we started the conversation, we said identity is a data problem. So we ingest data from different sources, from IDPs to clouds to applications, other sources into a single data lake. That's a core foundation. The core foundation is a data lake. But why? Why did we build a data lake? Because to solve the problem the right way, to be able to automate identity operations, you need to have context. To have context, you need to have the right AI and ML models. To have the right AI and ML models, you have to have the data. So we started with a data-centric approach where we ingest all the data, not just configuration, posture data, behavioral data, activity logs, because that's how you can establish a baseline, build the behavior, whether it's a traditional NHI or a human, which is ad hoc, or an agentic AI. And the permissions, like there are different kinds of permissions, 15, 20,000 permissions in cloud and SaaS. All of that goes into data lake. You have a graph. Every identity has a graph. Now that you have data, you can build you can run ML and AI models that derives context, whether it's risk scoring or anomaly detection or automating just-in-time access, whatever the case may be. All of those become use cases on top of the underlying data lake with the ML models in context. So that's how we think about it. Like Samir, you said, right? There are many problems. How do you solve them? Well, the right way to solve, in our view, is having centralized data, running ML models and AI models, deriving context, and then have workflows that use the context to automate intelligently. That's a crux of how we think.
Hey, quick break from the show. Let's talk about looking good while doing good work. I'm talking about Leo Vici. It's not just a clothing line, it's luxury, comfort, and edge all rolled into one. I wear Leo Vici because it fits, both literally and metaphorically. Whether I'm speaking on stage or recording this podcast, I want to look sharp without sacrificing comfort. So, guys, I couldn't do anything without getting you a hookup. So right now you can use code Identity Jedi at checkout for 15% off your next order. So go to leovici.com, check it out, and let's get you back to the show. And I'm gonna take us in a slightly different direction though, but I think we'll like this detour because, and I believe, internet and followers, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I believe it was the CEO of Microsoft, right, who talked about this age of AI and like software and how we would solve problems and how it would be differently, right? And as you were kind of breaking down the structure of like, how are we going to go into this and solve this problem, right? It becomes what AI gives us that we've never kind of had before as just a general tech industry is this ability to solve math and data problems super, super fast, right? Mm-hmm. And so now we've got a very, no pun intended, intelligent layer that can sit on top of data and solve problems and give context to it. And so now, if you think about it, you break down a software application. If I'm going to build a software, the first thing you do is you build your back-end data. Where am I going to get my data from? How am I going to store it? Great. What's my UI interface going to look like? How are you going to connect into it? But the meat has always been what? Like the business logic, right? Mm-hmm. How do I make the objects and the references and all these things in the business logic and solve these kind of issues? Well, now, like if you look at AI and go, well, especially as it gets to agentic, well, it's like, well, AI can do that and be the business logic. And so now this kind of new layer of applications is data, right? So I need, some kind of data lake and access to data, mm-hmm. and an agent, an LLM, or whatever you want to call it, where I can do my ML, my modeling on top of that, and an agent that can look at that and then based on that make decisions and solve problems based off of the data and then present that back. And so now what I get is like this kind of different architecture of an application, and it's more data, AI agent, and then interface. And now my interface is like, what do I want to solve? What's the problem I want to understand? I want to know this. Okay, well, based off the data, I can go help you do this. Like it does change the dynamic of how you look at solving problems, right? It makes it more, and not for mathematicians or true kind of like people who went into the computer science. I mean, you've been solving problems like this forever, right. But now we bring that to the business level and enterprise, and you can present that to anybody, mm-hmm. and say, now I've given you a platform that understands data, and you can ask it questions and kind of help solve problems that normally you couldn't do before. And just that thought and that mindset. And the reason why I want to take that detour is because when you look at a problem that way, it completely shifts what you're trying to solve, right? A lot of the questions and features you would ask before, like, it doesn't really matter. Like you get to the point of like, okay, well, what do you want to do with this data, mm-hmm. right? Not necessarily what thing can I go. It was like, tell me what you want to do with this data. Well, I want to be able to understand who has access to it. Okay, no problem. Now I can kind of bring these models to kind of show you that. Now, what do you want to do with it? I want to be able to take an action on this. Well, now that I've laid out the data and the access to the paths, and you understand what it is, actions become kind of easy at that point, correct. Right? So it's going to be a very interesting decade in identity. Like I think that we're going to see a complete evolution and transformation of what identity platforms look like. They're not going to look anything like they did 10 years ago. And I think in general, security applications are going to do the same thing. And you hit on something, Ashish, that user experience, right? Like that is going to become such a key thing, because it's now like, how do I make this easier for users to understand, easier to use, but also easier to interact with? Because we're able to interact with applications in a way that we really haven't been able to do. Like not the average person. As power users, yes.
Yeah.
But the average person, not. So anyway, it's fascinating. Sorry for the little ramble there.
No, that makes total sense. Total sense. And in fact, we can take a few examples on your detour, right? So the kind of questions now we can ask is, well, should this person have access to this? What is the risk? What is the risk quantification if this person were to be compromised? Or somebody just joined the organization. What role should that person have? What permission should they have based on where they are joining, right? Everything becomes a data problem. You do access certifications or attestations. Well, it doesn't become a rubber stamp anymore, right? You have the context. This person is using it frequently. This person hasn't used it for 6 months. It's like, of course, you should get revoked.
Right.
Or somebody's requesting a privilege access. It doesn't have to be manually approved. Well, this makes sense. This person uses it on a weekly basis from the same location. Just approve it. Go for the speed. But this person hasn't used it ever. Why is it requesting privilege access? Ask, right? Ask for approval. So everything becomes contextual, intelligent. You can balance the 80-20 rule. Like 80% of the time, you're just approving it automatically because it makes sense. 20% of the time, something is abnormal. Then you add those gates that you need. So
yeah,
it becomes it. Now you can achieve the security and the speed, the agility balance because you have context.
Yeah, I 1,000% agree. And I think the thing is, when you look at where, especially things from an audit perspective, compliance perspective, context is always what's been missing. Yes. And since we didn't have that, what do? Like you always solve for you always solve for the problem and variable that you don't have in front of you, right? So if I got 3 variables, I can only solve for 2, I'm just going to focus on those 2. So I'll build a solution around those 2 because I don't know the third. And right. Context was that third. Here's what I mean by that, right? Like quarterly attestations, yearly attestations, all these things exist. Why? Because it's like we couldn't correlate and get enough of the access and detail around to understand what this access was. So I just said, okay, every so often, I'm going to tell Samir to go look at it and tell me whether or not this person should have access or not, right? Like I need a human to go and figure that out. And it became quarterly or yearly. Why? Because if I told Samir to do it every day, he'd quit. Or he'd never get it done and just be like, all right, whatever, right? And so we settled for what was there. Why? Because we couldn't solve the variable of context. But now if you can bring that in and go, well, pull up the access, and it's like, well, I know when they used it. I know the last time they used it. I know how much they have. I know what these things are. Okay. That becomes a very simple rule set. Like it's so funny. I'll talk to customers sometimes, and I at some point we're going to get some auditors on this podcast because I love to ask them the question. It's like, okay, so when you're looking at something and you say, okay, well, we can't take automated approvals. I was like, well, why not? Well, because we need to know who approved. Okay, so what do you think this human is doing when they approve it? Right. Well, they're looking and seeing whether or not this user should have the access. Okay, let's define that. What is should have the access? Like everything you're asking them to do comes down to a rule set. If we can automate that rule set, we've already done it. So what are you really asking for? You just want a human to push the button just to say that they pushed the button?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's a hard question. It's a tough question. It's a sensitive question. 100% agree.
It is, because what it comes down to, and this is like we never see this in the private sector, but I started my career in the public sector. We see all this a lot. It's like, so what you're really asking is non-repudiation. What you want then, right? If you're saying Samir's got to push his button and sign off on this, okay, well then let's have Samir digitally sign the approval, because what you want is I want the ability to come back and go, if something happens, I need to be able to go and blame Samir.
Accountability.
That's what you're asking for. You're not asking what the rule set is, because I've already given you the rule set and I've done it and showed that why this person needs to have this access. Right. You want somebody to blame.
Right.
So you want to fix the non-repudiation. So let's go solve that. Well, no, we don't want to go there. Oh, okay. So you really don't want to solve this problem. You just want to stay right here because it's like, but now we actually have it and we can automate that. Like access certification should be dead in an enterprise within 5 years.
Hopefully.
Like technically, everything will be there to get it done. Now, we will start to see whether the auditors really want to audit or whether they just want to charge hours and collect a paycheck, which, you know, most consultants do. But because it doesn't make sense to spend that amount of time to do it. Those rules that you're implementing, I mean, audit compliance, SODs, they're all these rules. We can implement all of those.
Yeah. So
I think
would love to ask
good.
you that question. Now that you're on the enterprise side, like, how do you think about it? Do you think we can automate compliance with context?
Are you asking me? Yeah, I was going to say. So I think there's an interesting thing. There's an interesting paradigm here because I think even auditors and compliance people are getting exposed to AI solutions to help their day jobs, right? So I think it's interesting when you take a data-centric approach, Ashish, that you mentioned. If everyone's reading from the same playbook, but everyone has their own little sandbox to do what they need to do, right? I think life can be much easier. So one is, I'm going to approve this just-in-time access request, and I'm eventually going to make it like table stakes so they don't even need to get an approval because every Saturday they have to do some break fix work, right? For example, so behavioral, you know, and then you can go deeper because you have all this data to say when they do get the access, it's actually only one person doing all the work. The other people who've been granted is a shared account, doesn't need to be through that, right? And you can make recommendations that are more aligned with being secure, you know, safe, you know, all that good stuff, but also being resilient to an identity being compromised, right? I think your explainability will come in.
Yep.
So I think, you know, I do think that compliance and auditors, I think that profession really has to evolve, right? And it will. It might be a little bit slow, but I think, you know, David said something about me being empathetic to founders now that I'm on the CISO side, or you know, vice versa at one of our podcasts. And I think it's important for employees to be empathetic to each other,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so when a risk person understands where the engineer is coming from, that they need to get stuff done, and it's all through the lens of one platform, but you know, kind of a binoculars into the data that they need,
Yeah.
right?
Different
And
lenses
you know,
for the same data. Yeah. Different lenses.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Ashish, I think like you know, you started. I don't know when Andromeda started. 3 years ago, 2 years ago. How long?
Just over 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think what we're talking about with AI and everything, I think it's not something you can solve overnight. But I think that if you solve it for even within the security team, right? For engineering, ops, and IT risk, which tends to be under security, to all have empathy and be able to read from the same playbook, that I'm not pinging 5 different people to get one response, right?
Yeah.
We break down the silos, we build trust, right? Through a platform, you're building trust within teams. I think then you can go beyond that and say, okay, how do we work better with enterprise architecture when you have design partners or when you onboard new customers? Hey, maybe we can help you solve this NHI problem from a architecture standpoint, from an enterprise architect, from a requirement standpoint, from a SaaS standpoint, right? You know, you're going to buy a SaaS product for HR, right? You are one voice, but hey, we can give you a whole lot of guidance from our identity platform. I think that's where I'm not trying to define your product roadmap. I haven't seen it, but I think, you know, even within security, man, there's so much blind spots within our teams that I think the world is your oyster at this time.
I agree 100%. I think they're just scratching the surface. But I think you made one very important point: empathy between employees in different groups. Right? I'll give an example. Right? Some of the customers we work with, it's like the developers are looking for privilege access to a role in AWS, for example, and they get it instantaneously if the role they're looking for's risk is within a threshold and they are behaving appropriately. As you said, every Saturday from the same device, or at least a trusted device and locations, and something is not anomalous, right? They get that speed. But suddenly, let's say they're traveling to a conference and the same request went through approval process, they'll appreciate why it slowed down, because the risk score will tell you your location is new, first time you're coming in from. Now the approvers also gets context. Well, this person always used it, but this time it's from a new location. You see, the developer will be less frustrated because they know that the platform is doing the right thing by highlighting the right risk. And the approvers will say, well, I normally don't get a request, but this time I got it because of some anomaly, right? That's, as you said, everybody's looking at the same data with different lenses, and you can empathize it. I think that'll solve a lot of problems. So I think you hit the nail on the head there.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's going to be interesting to see. Everything is, I'm trying to think of a better word than dynamic, because I feel like we've used that too much. But that's the word that's coming to mind right now. Like, our ability to build truly dynamic interactions with these applications, right? Just in any application, and I get some, when it comes to identity, customers are still so far behind, and they're so used to like the old like ticketing system ways, and like so much stuff we run through like ServiceNow and all these things or whatever. But I'm like, really what you're talking about is this, we're able to make these connections and make decisions. And even in that process, right? Like, who says it has to be, it's an approval. It can be a quick notification on Slack with that context.
Right, exactly.
Right? Or Teams, or hell, like I would love to even see companies like develop a mobile app.
Yeah.
Right? Just have a simple mobile app that's on the phone, and it's just a push notification. It says, oh, that's right, my guy is traveling. Oh, this is what, no problem. Except, boom, like the way we operate right now, right? Like even in the enterprise, and we saw so much of this, right? 2020 advances for a lot of organizations, and for most of us in tech have always been there. Like, man, I'm trying to like this and my MacBook Air. That's my office, man. I got it. I can like literally can do any and everything I need with those two things, right? So, and I say that to say, like, sometimes I think we still have this old school thinking of like B2B enterprise software, like big clunky, like, dude, like, no, like, give somebody like a simple screen that's easy to understand, easy to process, send people a notification. Like it can be so simple as like, here, you need to approve this for these reasons, boom, click this button, done, and keep it moving, right? Like it is, like I said, I am so excited to see like what comes out the next couple of years, specifically in this space, but just technology in general. Like I'm always researching and looking at it all, but I really think you're going to start seeing push the boundaries with customers, and it's because the customers themselves are pushing boundaries, right? Because they're having to solve problems in different ways. And Samir, you can kind of speak to this a little bit, getting back to seat and what you're seeing. Like you don't, I don't think customers have the luxury now of being tied down with all this stuff. It's like you got to move, like you've got to move your business at such a fast speed. Like you need solutions that can move with you and meet you like where you are. And I know that sounds so cliche, but like truly, like it's got to be able to meet you where you are and how you work. And I think that the winners of this, whatever you want to call these platforms, whatever, is going to be the ones that really understand that. It can go, okay, Samir, oh, this is how your business moves. Cool. We're gonna slip right into that stream. No problem. Yeah. Right.
No, it's so true, man. I like getting back into the CISO seat. I can tell you, I find Okta to be clunky. I would have never said that 5 years ago. Wow, it's so much better. Microsoft, Entra, back then they didn't call it Entra, but whatever. The Microsoft solutions, it was better than Ping at the time when we looked at it in terms of usability. The Okta MFA, the little app that kind of you have to hit yes, I approve, etc. I think now when I look at Okta, when I compare it to what my expectations are, they're much higher, right? I want you to meet me in what I was doing in a startup. In a startup, I used Notion and I used Google. And when I talk about Notion at a company, they're like, what is that? They don't know it, right? It's still not well known in large enterprises and maybe not outside the Bay Area. And because I know you're in the Bay Area, Ashish, but I think the Bay Area doesn't wait. They just move. They make quicker decisions. But I think when employees are moving jobs and coming to, say, a non-tech company, they're not going to expect, 3 different ways to log in and have to wait for my token. And, they're not going to wait for, and the other thing is a generational change, right? The generations that are now moving into management and executive roles are maybe also in a cloud native, mindset or tech heavy mindset, including marketing people, including salespeople, right? You're going to say something?
No. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm just thinking
So
about,
I
yeah.
think, yeah, I think the expectation of a flawless, easy to administer UI, UX with the ability to have intuitive workflows that just because you hand it off to an agent doesn't mean you don't want to know what the agent did, right? And the thought process behind it. Because at the end of the day, we have to be able to contextualize it for our bosses that this work was done by the agent, this work was done by the team, this is how we collaborate and got things to get done together. Our UX has to be really rethought, and it's happening as we speak, right? So my view is that employees will quit jobs if you say, I am going to give you a Dell computer, right? And I expect you to be in my office. Now, some of them might be golden handcuffs to your Amazons and your Googles, etc. But a lot of them, and you guys have heard about the gig economy, right? Enough about the gig economy where people are not going to put up with that crap anymore, right? You can be blockers, and security has been the laggard behind all of this, right? Let's talk about security tooling versus Notion versus Glean versus all these companies that even I haven't used fully, but I hear so much about from the Bay Area, right? I think we will have to evolve. Otherwise, it's what's going to be, Ashish, and I'm not predicting this kind of, well, after looking at today's stock prices, maybe anything's possible. But I was going to say that it's going to become that 80% of the GDP of America is going to be Bay Area and New York, and everybody else is going to suffer unless we start really, kind of up leveling ourselves in Austin, in Colorado, in Chicago, in Atlanta to be like that mindset of break fast, build fast, and really, really, empower your employees, right?
I think you made some good points, Amir, but I think the two key takeaways from me from your last couple of minutes is I think user experience is extremely important. It has to be easy. And I think we have achieved a place where we can intelligently automate by using context and combining that with user experience. I think we can achieve what you're trying to say, Samir, which is make security as easy as an iPhone app, if you will, but without compromising the security. And the without compromising security part comes from the context, from the data, right? The earlier part of a conversation. So I think that's where solve for security, solve for business agility and user experience, and get ready for the agentic AI, right? I think that's where things are
No,
going.
yeah, you're right. I think there's I think when you said data centric, I think companies need to be data and end user design. I don't know what the word is. Maybe it's design centric. Maybe it's that Apple
Designs,
mindset of
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
maybe it's
No.
that combination, right? And I think the last piece is like get used to change. Like, I don't know how old you are, Ashish, but I never asked David his age, but I think we're going to be the guys that have to be, kind of our minds have to move like the young folks, right? That are super, high expectations on their UX and their experiences. And I think that the other part is like, Ashish, I know you guys are doing it, but given you're in the Bay Area, I had a question for you about this, right? Do you see other founders, and just forget founders, other people in the Bay Area also thinking along these lines the way you're thinking about things?
I think so. I think so, both Bay Area and elsewhere. I think it really depends on. So let me step back. Where we are seeing the need for this, because that's where we are also seeing traction as an Andromeda, is
Yeah, yeah.
cloud first, cloud forward companies. The prevalence of cloud DevOps engineering mindset is resulting in a demand for what you just said, Samir, which is the speed and agility combining with security, right? So I'll give you a practical example. Just-in-time access, coming back to identity topic, everybody's like, the right way to do is just enough access, just-in-time access, etc., right? If you look at where the adoption is in a traditional enterprise, it's still behind,
Yeah.
right? But where
Mm.
it's picking up, and we've seen it from our customers, is other software vendors or vendors or enterprises who are cloud first and cloud forward, where they have a built-in engineering team who are developing their own SaaS applications, where their engineers, like you said, cannot wait for even a 2-hour delay of an approval. That's what's changing. I think the enterprise
Mm.
asks, which is, I want that speed and agility. And I think the rest of the enterprises will follow, just like any curve. But we are seeing the adoption of just-in-time automated access in this cloud forward companies, cloud first companies. And I think that's the same signal that you're referring to, is break fast, build fast, do it quickly. I can't wait kind of mindset. So it's coming.
Yeah, makes sense. I don't know if you guys have heard this. Sorry, David, I was going to say one more comment around this is when we first started Balkanati back in the day, or, when companies were being founded like 3-4 years ago, the whole thing was like, oh, we want to be the Tesla. Right? We used to, I remember Subbu and I would say, we want to be the Tesla for identity, right? Automated and self-driving and all that. He loves that. Subbu loves that. And then recently I've started hearing from founders who are pitching to me, I want to be the Glean for pen testing. I want to be I don't know what the new buzzword is, Ashish, but I imagine and Glean is not public. I mean, I
Yeah.
hadn't heard of Glean till they told me. I'd heard of him, but I hadn't paid super attention, right?
Mhm.
And probably a year ago, people were like, I want to be the Chat GPT, right? So it's moving so fast that it's no longer, I want to be the Google for cybersecurity,
Yeah.
right? It's like, it's that next level. And I'm hoping someday somebody turns on and says, you know what? I did hear this, guys. We want to be the whiz for identity. We want to be the whiz for this, right? So whiz is now that identity company people are calling the benchmark just because the exit.
Yeah.
I don't think people are thinking about all the Wiz does have issues, let's be honest. It's not perfect, right? But when people saw the exit, they said, oh, I want to be the Wiz. I want to be the Wiz of security, right? So, but it's interesting how we baseline ourselves as the market has been evolving and changing.
Yeah. I think there's multiple reasons why people want to be the Wiz. I mean, they broke a ton of records on their way to where they got, but
yes,
I look at it as when I look at that is, so to get that much traction that quickly, right? And my head's been so much in marketing that like everything blends in, comes down to marketing now, right? But that's the equivalent of going viral, right? Because what does that mean if you think about that? Because I thought what it was like the first 18 months, like most ARR like we'd ever seen, period, in any company or whatever. But to do that, right? And it's funny because all three of us, right, have at one point said that thing like what is it to get a customer, right, in the enterprise to acquire a product? Just that's hard, right? Let's give that on the hard scale. Let's give it like a 6. That's pretty hard, right? So it's like, okay. But so then to repeat that at a rate of that speed, right? That's almost extreme. Like extremely difficult. Because what you're saying is like the product fit a need so well, right, that I had to accelerate my ability to get it, right? That's how much that product solved a problem. And whether or not it was the actual product itself, how they sold it, whatever, right? The old quote, right? The one-eyed man is king in the realm of the blind, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it was a great product, but if nobody else is solving it, it doesn't have to be a great product.
Yeah.
It's just got to be the product that's at least solving part of the problem. And so people look at that rocket rise. I think we will see. I don't think we'll see anything like them, for a while. But I think we will see more of these kind of, viral rocket on companies just because the ability to do things so fast. And I know, sorry, yeah, all little things. I'll edit that out in post. Like, and Samir, you talked about this founder was like, oh, like I used this and did it over the weekend, but it's like, and to some extent, you're like, okay, I don't know if I trust that, but like that also goes to the world that we live in. Like that's how fast, like you can build and shift and change functionality, right? Like you can literally build an entire app in a weekend. It's not even really a weekend. It's really a good solid day, right? Like you give a good solid engineer 6 hours with today's tools, and it's like, I can get you a solid 1.0, right? Now we all know like enterprise level, we got to scale it. Yep. We have other customers we got to support. It's got to be like, that's a different story. But like the ability to build features and shift and change your product, right? I think we will see that. We'll see something else kind of catch on and take off, and their ability to kind of shift and react to the market's going to be interesting. So listen, we could talk forever about this, but we won't. But I want to do this. This is how I want to wrap, right? Like looking, I'm gonna ask each of you to kind of put your forward thinking hats on. And here's the question: over the next 3 years, what is the problem that you absolutely believe will be solved? right? And you can be bold with this. Just go look in the next 3 years, like, whether it's, hey, passkeys will absolutely take over and passwords will be done, whatever it is, right? Looking at our space right now, what's the thing in the next 3 years? You're like, looking at where we are now, looking at this problem, this will absolutely be solved. Let's start with Ashish.
Okay. So I think I'll say a couple of things, right? I think we see a proliferation of so many identity tools, right, of different categories. I think there are like 5, 6, maybe 8 different acronyms. I think you'll see a consolidation. You'll see consolidation because that's the only way to build context with the centralized data. Once you have context, you have multiple use cases in a single architecture, single platform. So I think today we have NHI as a separate category from PAM, from IGA to ITDR and ISPM. I think that'll vanish. I think it will become a single. I don't think we'll merge with the authorized authentication piece. I think we'll still need authentication tools, but the authorization and life cycles, the permissions and life cycle, I think you'll see significant consolidation across human, non-human, across different use cases. That's one. And second is, I think agentic AI will be a big problem, and I think it'll be solved at least to some extent in the next couple of years. So given that, with this architecture, as you move towards a data-centric architecture and a context base, the same thing will help you solve the agentic AI problem from an identity entitlements and lifecycle management point of view. There are other problems to be solved in agentic AI, right? I'm just talking it from the identity side of things.
Right.
So,
yeah. Love it. Samir, what do you think, man?
I'm a pessimist, dude. I think that with marketing and sales companies like Gartner, and I do want what Ashish said to happen. I do want security teams to get leaner and more productive, right? But I think the problem with the world is, maybe I'm becoming philosophical here, and maybe I'm just having one of those days, where I think that with salesy type, marketing type firms like the Gartners and the consultants, right? I would love to say what I hope to be solved is that consulting companies either evolve or die when they come in and say, we'll do your identity architecture analysis, or we will define your roadmap, right? And that becomes more of a, like, let's do it in a day, right? Let's do it when we have all the data from Ashish's product or 2 other products out there that give all this context to them, and they come back with things quickly versus wasting time, money, effort, playing politics. But that's the problem with humans. That I think we live for the drama. Ashish and I are both Indian, and we can tell you that there's a reason why Bollywood is still popular with all the stuff that happens on it, right? So one can only hope. Let me just say that.
Yeah, I wish. Yeah, I know you're so right, Samir. But yes, let's hope for the best. I'm an optimist, so yeah.
There we go. We'll be optimistic today.
What are your predictions? What are your predictions, David?
So, I think I am very bullish on agentic AI. I think the concept of a disconnected application will absolutely be gone in 3 years. I think that's where agentic AI will absolutely change how we're able to connect and get access to data and kind of bring that in. So I think that's one thing that'll happen. The other one is, I agree with your first statement, is that like I think the consolidation will finalize itself. We've been moving towards this way for about 5 years now. And I think, and I'm going to be really specific with this prediction, so I can come back later and say that I was right or maybe wrong. But I think right in like year 2, what we're going to see is the standard shift for what an identity platform is, right? And to your point, Ashish, I do think authorization will get pulled in there, and I think it'll be, authorization, lifecycle management, and kind of what right now I'll call detection response. I even think like the IGA PAMs, I think that's going to start to, I think those words will start to kind of go away. We're really going to look at it as like, well, what this really is I need to be able to understand the life cycle of an identity. I need to be able to look at threats and respond to things around that identity. And I need to be able to, kind of have context and authorization around there. I think that'll happen around like year 2 into this. We're going to start to settle into what that is, because also what's going to happen is these big companies that made all these acquisitions, we're going to be in about year 4 of that, right? And that's around where they'll kind of figure it out and kind of put out what these Frankenstein monsters will be. And you're going to have to talk about it differently because you don't like, I mean, we've all been founders and at some point like product people, right? Like you're not going to, when you got 4 or 5 pieces, you're going to talk about them differently and kind of, think about them as modules. But once you've had the time to figure out what that engineering team is and figure out that architecture, right? And go through it's now one big thing now. And so now you talk about it as here is this platform and here's what it does. And so it's going to force us to talk about it different. So I think we'll see that happen in the next 3 years. Granted, I mean, these are things I want to happen, but I'm going to take the optimistic side. I'm not going to be pessimistic like here, but he's got a point. I can see that happening too. All right.
All right.
Well, guys, this was awesome, man. This was a great conversation. We got to do this more often. Ashish, you are welcome back anytime, man.
Absolutely. I loved it. No, I loved energy and back and forth. So yeah, it was great. I could have gone for another hour.
I know, right? We got to do, so we'll, once we get the live schedule down, because I want to, so we want to try and do 2 live shows this year. Right. Well, we'll reach out. Maybe we can make it happen, whether it's in Austin or maybe we got to do something on the West Coast. We got to do something in the Bay Area. Matter of fact, all right, I've got an idea of brewing. I'm not going to say it on the show. Don't worry, people. But I think I got a card we can pull. We can make this happen on the West Coast. I think it'd be fun.
Perfect. Awesome. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Listen, everybody, this is a wrap for this interview. Thank you to Ashish for coming in, hanging out with us. Listen, you guys know what it is. Subscribe, like on whatever platform you listen to this on. It all goes a long way. It helps every single one of us get this thing going. There's a team behind me and Samir making this happen. And so when you like, rate, subscribe, gives us the energy to keep on going. Don't forget to subscribe to the Identity Jedi newsletter in your inbox every 2 weeks on Wednesday. You can subscribe at theidentityjedi.com. And that's it. That's all the plugs I got. So until next time, you guys know what it is. Be good to each other. Be kind to each other. Love each other. We'll see you guys on the next show. All right, listen, big thanks to Ashish for coming out and sharing so much wisdom on the Identity Jedi pod. It's so much fun talking to him. Got to make sure we have him back. I think when we want to do some more live events this year. And so definitely think we'll reach out to Ashish and have him back on the pod, maybe for one of our live events. Listen, if today's conversation sparks something in you that you really like, share this episode with your team, your leadership, or your LinkedIn tribe. And if you haven't already, listen, like, rate, subscribe, follow, all those good stuff. If you're on YouTube, hit that bell so you get all the notifications when we drop new episodes. If you're on Spotify, we can drop comments on Spotify. And if you're watching the video on Spotify, we appreciate you. Follow the podcast on Spotify. Listen, last year we finished for the year top 10 of video content watched on Spotify platform. We want to make sure we're back in that top 10 again this year. So we appreciate it. All of it goes a super long way and allows us to keep delivering that quality content that you guys know and love. So with that, I told you after the break to come back for a little bit more. So like I said, in the notes below, I'm going to drop my post where I drop a lot of the architecture and things I've been talking about for an identity data lake. I want to continue having that conversation. Hit me up on the mailbag, identityjedi@gmail.com, to let me know what your thoughts about it are. Leave comments on the newsletter website, however you want to do it. Subscribe to the newsletter while you're at it, www.theidentityjedi.com. We drop content on there every week. You get a blog post every Monday. You get the newsletter every Wednesday, every other Wednesday. Listen, we've got content just everywhere for you. We want to make sure that we're giving this stuff to you in the best way that we possibly can, and that you always have some good content to absorb, however you like to absorb it. So, final thoughts I want to say on this identity lake topic, right? I really do think that this is an important area that all of us need to look at when you are looking at your identity program. I'm having a lot of conversations about, modernization and wanting to take things forward. As we're looking at identity in the landscape, it is getting bigger and bigger. The amount of things that we have to manage, it's going to be outside the scale of your team, just period. I don't care how big and how great your team is. There's just too many things happening too fast to be able to manage all of them. And so I think now's the time to really start to be having those data conversations at your identity program. How is your identity data structured? Where are you getting it from? What are some of the things you can do to unlock some of these things around your data to make this easier to process this data for you and start to truly get the most out of your identity data? It's now to start having those conversations, right? I think this is one of those areas where, It doesn't have to be a massive wholesale change. I'm not saying throw everything out that you've done and restart from scratch. If you've already in the middle of your implementation or your deployment, or you're 4, 5, 6, 7 years in, right? It's like, hey, man, we can't go build an identity data lake, no problem. But start having the conversation. If we did, what would we do? Start looking at some of the things you're doing now. Are there areas where we can improve and say, listen, here are the different scripts and different ETL type activities we're running on our data. Is there a better way that we can do this, right? Could we build something on the side? Even if we just say, listen, we just duplicate it, and I know duplicating effort, but we put it on the side so that way we have a single database, a single area that we're starting to really mine and understand this data, right? So again, thoughts to have, good thought exercises to have within your organization as you look to go and accomplish some of these things. But give me your feedback as always, because I love to hear it. Until next time, you guys know what it is. Be good to each other, be kind to each other, love each other. We'll see you guys on the next episode, and we will see you guys in Las Vegas for Identiverse.
I won't stop, I can't stop. The grind is all I know. I'm focused, I can't stop. The hustle's all I know. I'm hungry, ambitious. My heart is on go. You in the presence of greatness. That's all you need to know.